Please welcome Ankit Jain of Infinitus Systems and Jeff Mills of iMerit to discuss bringing complex conversational AI to production in RPA. Before we jump into the discussion, let's see the potential of AI in healthcare. Watch how Eva, an AI digital assistant, navigates a complicated phone call for a patient.
Welcome to Provider Services for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of. This call may be monitored or recorded for quality and training. Please say or enter your NPI number. 15. Thanks. Next, say or enter just the numeric part of the member's ID. 13. One moment while I connect you with a representative. The estimated wait time for a representative is greater than 25 minutes. Please stay on the line and your call will be answered in the order received.
Thank you for calling Provider Services. My name is Tracy. How can I help you today?
Hi, Tracy. This
Hello?
is Eva, calling on behalf of on a recorded line. I'm looking for some benefit information for patient.
And Eva, what's the first letter of your last name?
My last name initial as L.
Thank you, Eva. And what is your NPI number, please?
The provider's NPI number as.
And which benefits are you looking for?
I would like to verify benefits specific to with code J's and administration code for diagnosis E, which will be done in a specialist office. Is prior authorization required for any of the codes?
Let me check. One moment, please. J's does require a prior authorization.
Do you see an active prior authorization on file?
No, I do not.
How do you obtain prior authorization?
Let me check. Through Availity.
What is the prior auth turnaround time?
Let me check. 7 to 10 business days.
Is the provider in network with the patient's plan?
Let me check. The individual doctor himself is not, but the facility that he's affiliated with is in the Aware network.
Thanks. Is there a copay or coinsurance for code J's?
One moment, please. Once the deductible has been met, there is a 10% coinsurance on the injection.
Can I have a reference number, please?
Reference number is going to be S as in sunshine.
One last question, Tracy. How was your experience today chatting with me?
Excellent.
You were an absolute pleasure to talk to as well. Thanks so much for your help today, Tracy. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, Eva. Thank you for calling.
Ankit, it's great to be speaking with you today. I enjoyed the demonstration we just watched. It was awesome to meet Eva. Please, will you introduce us to Infinitus a bit and the challenges Eva is helping your clients solve?
Well, Jeff, first of all, thanks for having me be part of this conversation. And it's an exciting day to be a part of the iMerit story that's being put together. For the last 2.5 years, we've been building Infinitus to build this platform with the goal of reducing the time for patients to get on therapy and to reduce the cost of healthcare, both pretty large problems that exist in today's ecosystem. We started, as you saw in the demonstration, with automating phone calls, which plague our healthcare ecosystem. There's something like 3.5 billion phone calls that are there between businesses just to exchange data, just to initiate processes, check the status of processes, things that those of us in the technology world would say, well, why isn't there an API for it? And so I think at a high level, what we want to try and do is establish those APIs so we can transition phone calls to API calls, try and drive that interoperability that all of us know we need in healthcare.
So First of all, that's amazing. I know that you guys recently raised $30 million from Google Ventures. I think that's because you've been solving such a big problem in the space and have scaled that. And I think, when you look at the practitioners and industry executives that are here today, they're interested on how you cross that chasm from R&D into production, especially in a vertical with significant regulation and security compliance. What were the most important obstacles that you were able to overcome to enable this success to happen?
And Jeff, I think that's a loaded question. There's many parts to it. So let me take one at a time. I think part one, which you'll see in any technology startup, is taking an idea and taking, whether that idea is technological or a business idea, and building a prototype. And I think the first thing we did was see the viability of building a machine that could have a conversation. And in the last few years, we've all been exposed to chatbots. We've all been exposed to Google, Alexa, Siri, that can do these short form conversations. But the average phone call that we're automating is somewhere in the range of 35 minutes. And I don't think that's the kind of technology you just pluck off a shelf and say, well, let's plug it into healthcare. And so the first thing we did was, well, let's build a demo of something that can talk for that long. The second thing, and this is more a social construct problem than a technological or business problem, is all of us get phone calls from machines on our cell phones. And what's the thing we do as soon as we hear that machine that says, we've got a new solar panel for you? Well, we just hang up. Right. And
I hang up when I hear the pause between the answer and the machine starting, but yes.
Correct. So sometimes you don't even get that far. And so the second thing we had to prove was, if we started making these phone calls, would they be received by the receiving party? And where would they be received? Where would they not be received? Because for a viable business to happen, that is focused on phone calls, you need to be able to have someone actually talk to the machine. So we proved that. And once we started seeing the traction there, we said, all right, now we need to build an enterprise solution, because the solution we've built today is being used by 3 out of the 4 healthcare companies in the Fortune 10. It's being used by many more companies in the Fortune 100. And none of them would start working with us unless we had the right compliance, security, privacy pieces in place. Those are table stakes. Before we even get to a POC, before we even get to someone saying, can you show us a demonstration? They say, do you guys have the following regulatory or security and compliance checklists in place? Because that's going to be the starting point. So all of those are table stakes, and then being able to integrate into their systems, work with their teams to make sure their use cases can be fulfilled is kind of bread and butter for what we do.
Was there a use case in there that challenged you guys a bit, that as you again moved from kind of testing this stuff out in R&D and really getting into deploying this within these 3 large healthcare providers you referenced, was there something in there that this group here in this community today could learn from you, that you might highlight as, this was one thing you might want to really think about as you go and take this journey?
Yeah, for anybody entering and using any part of AI, I think what social media, what even academia to some degrees, and most definitely science fiction tries to portray, is AI can do anything and everything. And I don't think we're quite there yet. My co-founder Sham and I, we always say that our superpower isn't AI, it's about building the right bounding boxes. It's taking a large problem and narrowing it to the point where it's actually solvable. Right? So if we think about what we've gone after at Infinitus, we've gone after conversational AI, being able to automate phone calls that happen in healthcare, within healthcare, the business to business ones that have very clear authentication procedures, that have very structured data, where we can define that API of what data goes into the conversation and what data needs to come out of the conversation. And once you put those kind of bounds, then you can go after a very tractable problem. And I think that guiding force, that ability to bound the problem, has been critical to our success to date. And now as we're scaling beyond business to business, to start doing calls that are patient facing, start doing calls that are business to consumer, there's different social aspects like the one I alluded to earlier that we also need to take into consideration and come up with innovative solutions to make sure that when we call a patient for something that is critical to their care, their therapy, their next procedure, that they don't just hang up on us, right? And so there's a lot of things that we need to do there, but that's where the kind of cutting edge of our innovation is transitioning from business to business to consumer.
So let's double click on that a bit. So, I'm sure there's edge cases and anomalies that start popping up, especially as you start, again, moving into these different types of calls. How did you incorporate the human monitoring? Did you build tools? Did you build processes to train human reviewers and stuff? Like, where does that work within your guys' stack and your workflow? Because that's an area that's being covered a lot. Today has been around the human in loop component and the edge cases coming up. Curious how you guys talk about how you've kind of adjusted to that process.
Yeah, kind of stepping back, Sham and I are technologists first. We're trying to make a change in the healthcare industry, but by no means are we healthcare practitioners. We're not physicians. We've never worked at a hospital or a pharmacy or an insurance company. And so one of the first things that we did was we started hiring people into our team that have been making or receiving these phone calls for decades to get that understanding of what this experience needs to be like. And that team is the basis for our operations team that serves a couple of purposes. One, they help us label our data to improve our AI models. Two, they help us do QA to make sure that we can deliver high quality product and services to our customers. And three, in the rare cases where needed, we have tools in place so that if Eva, the digital assistant you heard earlier, comes across something she's not come across in the past or something that hasn't quite been automated yet, a human can be brought in the loop to make sure that we can deliver value to our customers while improving our systems. It's kind of like the safety driver in a self-driving car that exists today. We need to be able to do that at scale.
I think that's a great reference. There's lots of discussion over the past couple of years about automation taking jobs away from people, and you're definitely in this kind of area where people would be concerned about that from a process perspective. So I'm kind of maybe asking a difficult question here, but let me ask that tough question. How many jobs do you think are impacted because of Infinitus? Do you think you've taken jobs out of the job market because of the work you guys are doing?
I'm very glad you asked the question. It's a question that comes up with every customer, but more importantly, with every employee at those customers. So far, as we've scaled Eva to do more and more over the last couple of years, we've actually not seen our customers reduce a single job. What it has done is it's unlocked those employees of theirs to do things that they wish they were doing. They can spend more time focused on patients and their families instead of waiting on hold just to get a piece of information. The analogy I always like to give is when I walk into a doctor's office and I go to that front desk staff member, they're often in front of a computer, that's their internal operations, but then have a headset with a phone on one side and a fax machine on the other. And when I say, hi, I'm here for my appointment, more often than not, they're like, hey, just a moment, please, because they're just finishing up a phone call. How nice would it be if what they instead did was, hey, welcome back. We're excited to see you. Thank you for filling out the pre-registration. You can walk right into your appointment. Instead, it's the wait a moment, please, and here's a clipboard. Can you fill out information that we already are supposed to know about you, right? So that's kind of one analogy. The second thing is often the people making these phone calls are healthcare practitioners like nurses. Nurses are very commonly making calls like prior authorization status checks because they can't get a patient on therapy before that prior authorization has been approved. And that nurse and the number of nurses in this country is never enough because there's so many patients. And so by unlocking the nurses to focus on patients, we can improve patient care and we can make healthcare about care again rather than waiting on hold.
Well, my wife is a nurse. She actually has a master's in nursing, and my brother's a surgeon. My dad happens to run a medical center in the Bay Area, and I showed them all your demo, and they loved it because exactly for the reasons that you said. And that's why I asked the question, because I had a feeling that they were as excited about it because they get to go do the jobs that they're supposed to be doing, and not the jobs that they have to be doing just to kind of check a box. Very impressed with what you guys are doing at Infinitus. Ankit, your journey's been great so far. We can't wait to see the next 30, 40, 50, 300 types of calls that you guys conquer in the future. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.